Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Counselor's Office. I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor, and we are back with more of the Counselor Reacts. Man, I did a video talking about Assassin's Creed Shadows, like the first time, and people got upset because I was like, why are we all so focused about, you know, this black guy as a samurai when the issue is that it's a game that's not even about Assassin's Creed anymore? And then another video came out, and I reacted to it about how Ubisoft was too lazy and put in like a random sword as decoration, and I memed on it saying because it was Zoro from One Piece's sword. I was like, oh, the most iconic thing from Assassin's Creed isn't even from Assassin's Creed in that display. It's literally something else that's better. And so here we are, where this whole Yakuza story, there's been like this back and forth going on, whether he's real, he's fake. And I'm very curious on how this is. I still have my opinion on Assassin's Creed Shadow. I think it's going to be, there's going to be people that obviously buy it because they see assassin and samurai. They're going to eat it up. But overall, I think it's going to be garbage, in my opinion, because it's not even an Assassin's Creed game. A ninja and a samurai are not assassins. I think Assassin's Creed died after Black Flag, maybe even Rogue. After that, it's gone downhill. I mean, and I say, like, in general, from what I enjoy playing, obviously the other games like Syndicate kept to like the whole Assassin's Creed style, but overall the gameplay went downhill for me. But we're gonna see and find out what the heck is going on with this Yasuke situation in the Yasuke Disaster, Ubisoft's Nightmare by Upper Echelon. The link will be down below for you guys to check it out for yourself.
All right, today's an interesting one because today we're talking about Assassin's Creed, Ubisoft, historical revisionism, and the Japanese government. There's more, a lot more, but the hook is that a wildly popular gaming franchise, that being Assassin's Creed, after a series of very unfortunate decisions, is actively being accused of cultural invasion, a problem that an official representative is now bringing in front of the Japanese Diete, which is their parliamentary government. His name...
And I did say that in another video, but I didn't really see anything specific, so maybe this is going to be more detailed than the other video I watched, because last time it was just more about like representation at a booth. And I was like, what? That's the biggest thing we're going to talk about, is this representation at a booth. So hopefully this video brings a little bit more to the table.
The representative is Satoshi Hamada, and I'll get to that part later on, but the gist of it is that an entire historical narrative was crafted over the span of about 9 years, only to now be heavily disputed at the expense of a multi-billion-dollar franchise which attempted to build its latest entry almost exclusively off the back of a highly suspect body of work. In essence, Ubisoft has made their next entry in the Assassin's Creed franchise the focal point of a brewing international scandal. Great job. This is where I have to go.
Why does this, I'm watching this and I'm assuming this is gameplay from Assassin's Creed. Why does this look like like she's a ninja, not an assassin? This feels like I'm watching Thief. Like, have you ever played the game? Like this is the vibe I'm getting from Thief or like any other ninja style game.
Go through a sort of narrative.
It doesn't
arc,
look good.
So to speak, and give the underlying context of the situation before expanding on how it all exactly fell apart. Assassin's Creed is one of the top grossing video game franchises of all time. It's on the top 3 or the top 5, mind you, and it pales in comparison to franchises like Pokemon or Mario. But having surpassed 200 million copies sold with $4.6 billion total revenue, it's one of the most successful entertainment properties on Earth. With,
I mean, let's be honest. That's good. That's great and all, but you gotta look like Halo. Halo is literally 5 billion on top. Like, it is up there, baby.
With no signs of slowing down. Just to highlight that point, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the latest entry before Shadows, which is the one we're talking about today, sold over 20 million separate copies.
Yeah, because it's Vikings. Let's be honest. People didn't get Assassin's Creed because it's Assassin's Creed. They got this because it's literally Vikings. People love Vikings. Like, let's be honest. I've watched gameplay. This doesn't look like Assassin's Creed. It is Vikings. Like, they could have, the only thing Assassin's Creed is the name. They could have literally just made a Viking game and it would have made the same sales, but they put it under the banner of Assassin's Creed.
Entry in the series, period. As a franchise, like it or not, personally being a diehard fan of the original trilogy with main character Ezio, Assassin's Creed is more
God.
successful now than ever before, making it a focal point in the video game landscape as Ubisoft progressively increases.
And I fully admit that I am the minority. It is obviously doing well. It's obviously making sales. It is obviously accelerating even with the new games. I fully admit this series is no longer for me. It is no longer Assassin's Creed in general because we're playing, it is literally storytelling of like random crap. Like there was the Origins where they're literally fighting Egyptian gods. And I was like, obviously, Assassin's Creed has always been fiction, right? But there's been some realism usually intertwined outside of the aliens and the whole backstory, which is fine. I was like, okay. But now we have Egyptian gods and then Odin. Like this is just their it feels like Assassin's Creed is becoming just this fan fiction without the assassins. But people like it. And so it's making sales. And I understand I am not the intended target any longer, which is why I do not play the games. Put that out there. Do I watch the gameplay? Do I observe the game? Do I analyze? Yeah. I think people say you can't have opinions because you never play the game. We live in the social entertainment world where you can literally watch and see an entire story and game just by watching someone else. I think it is a stupid brain dead take to say, oh, if you never played it, then you can't have an opinion on it. No, you can. You can't say, oh, well, the gameplay feels bad. Well, I can't say that because I've never felt it. But can I say the gameplay looks bad and the story is bad? Then yeah, I can make that. I can make that comparison.
Increases their marketing and development budgets year after year after year with notable success while doing so. Sure, they have their failures at times, but Assassin's Creed isn't one of them. And barring any sort of unexpected consequences, this latest entry, that being Shadows, would seem very likely to continue that trend. Maybe. For anyone who isn't already aware, Assassin's Creed Shadows is set in feudal Japan.
That is probably the most assassin-y thing I've seen. So that actually looked good.
Which really isn't surprising at all after a game called Ghost of Tsushima basically copied the formula and sold almost 10 million copies over 4 years as a PlayStation.
Not played that game either.
People have been asking for a game about feudal Japan. Ubisoft have progressively expanded their repertoire.
People love feudal Japan. And I know there was like a video saying that there's too many of them. There isn't like a lot of these, or at least the ones that are really popping off right now. Ghost of Tsushima is probably the most notable one.
Locations for the franchise. And all things considered,
people want
it seems
this.
like a perfect time for the franchise to make that jump. However, if you're going to make a Japanese-themed game, you probably shouldn't piss off Japanese people, and that's where Ubisoft epically dropped the ball. In May of 2024, Ubisoft unveiled the official trailer for the game, and pretty much immediately afterward, things started to get a little bit weird. The story was set to feature 2 main protagonists, one male, one female, like before, but the male protagonist was determined to be Yasuke, who is, quote, the first black samurai and referred to elsewhere as the first foreign-born samurai as well. This is where the controversy starts, because according to an interview with game director Charles Benoit, conducted in Xbox GameWire, quote, we're at the end of Sengoku era, in a turning point of Japan history.
I like how the book says a true story. Like you have to really gotta tell people, hey, this is true.
Creed is well known for its depiction of the history and accurate recreation of the world, and it's what players can expect with Assassin's Creed Shadows. We're showing real historical figures, such as Oda Nobunaga and a lot of events that happened during that time, so you're not only playing in feudal Japan, but learning about this fantastic time period. Also, we're giving the opportunity to the players to live not just one, but the 2 best fantasies of Japan, the samurai and the shinobi.
Just make a game. That's why I don't understand. This is an Assassin's Creed. Just literally make a feudal world and make it its own thing. Like, am I the only one stuck up on this? Is this we're having a cultural war about whether a samurai is black? But I'm over here like, can we just have assassins in Assassin's Creed again? Like, oh, it's just me. Okay. I'll sit back.
End quote. On its face, that's pretty good. However, opinions rapidly took a turn for the worse when the true atmosphere of the game started taking shape, with examples like this cropping up from the gameplay trailer and getting plastered all over online messaging boards and social media.
Not while I have breath in my lungs and a blade in my hand. I said kill him. I'll wash away his failure with your blood.
For anyone who
Yeah, that's racist. I'm sorry, but that is, not only are you taking, instead of being like culturally acceptable for Japanese sounds, but you literally you took Japanese stylistic sound like music and then slapped hip hop into it. But that's not the racist part. The racist part is, oh, because he's black, it has to be hip hop. Like if there was like cinematic or orchestral or like rock, like, okay. But the fact that it is too much on the nose, like, oh, he's black, so it has to be hip hop Japanese music. So racist. Because you're black, you like hip hop. So that's obviously the why they did it. It's like we have this black character, we want African American people to like this black character, and we're really gonna feed into the black characterness of this. So let's put the stereotypical of, hey, black people like hip hop, so let's make it hip hop.
didn't notice there, the background track is basically hip hop infused Asian battle music, which absolutely does not match the time period, the atmosphere, or the subject matter, except for one particular way. I'll skip over the smaller stuff here. And get right to the
I just said it. It's racist.
Main issues, but the general consensus around this game began to rapidly sour, especially in mainland Japan. See, Yasuke, the main protagonist, and the quote.
And I want to make it very clear, like, I'm not trying to do this old white savior complex thing, like, oh, it's racist and I have to speak up for the black people. Like, I can guarantee that there are African Americans out there that do not like being stereotyped, and they find it very racist to be stereotyped. And that's what this is doing. It's stereotyping. Now, there may be African Americans that dig it, and like, yeah, I like this. This is dope. I don't care. That's great. You know what? I'm not here to decide for the African American community what's racist and what's not. But anything stereotypical is generally racist or something along those lines. Because there is a large population of African Americans that do not like stereotypes. And that's exactly what this is.
First African samurai has rapidly ascended the rungs of popularity and recognition in the West, but not so much elsewhere in the world. Yasuke is the subject of a Netflix animated series now. He has multiple media mentions. There's a Broadway show about him even, slated for 2026. And he also shows up in other video games as well, like a boss fight in Nioh 2 called The Obsidian Samurai. But pretty much...
Can I just make a note? Why does it feel like there's nothing iconic? Like, I'm probably wrong, and I know I'm probably wrong, but no one wants to dig that deep to actually make it happen. But it feels like there isn't anything iconic or like huge or popular with Afro-American culture that like there's this one character that really pops out that people would represent in media. So they have to go out of their way to try to find other cultures and other kind of facets of entertainment, such as, oh, well, people love samurai, let's find a black samurai, instead of there being actually something African American that's really, really cool. Like, it feels like we have to try to make something our own in order to feel included, because on their own they've got nothing. I think I'm wrong, because I'm pretty sure someone said Africa has some really cool like lore, but just no one refuses to dig deep and actually make that happen. That's what it feels like. It feels like we're just taking cool aspects from other stories and making African Americans characters from that, versus actually just making something that's original or from said culture.
All of that recognition
I'd be wrong.
Stems from a particular historian, a historian named Thomas Lockley.
I've not heard good things about this guy.
Pretty much every modern Western mention of Yasuke tracks back directly in some capacity to Thomas Lockley. For the prior examples, I even gave myself the Smithsonian article referring...
See, this is where I read the article as well. So the fact that everything, even like actual Smithsonians and all these like historical contexts lead to this one guy is very shady.
to Yasuke as the first black samurai, quotes Lockley directly, referencing his book, and that very same book, released in 2019, is the basis for almost every modern depiction of Yasuke that I could even find. Thomas Lockley is the premier historian associated with Yasuke, but the incredible...
Isn't it crazy that the white guy and not someone who's an African American is the leader of this? Just a little thing to pop out. Like, usually where there's smoke, there's fire, and I'm smelling a flaming turd right now.
Popularity of Assassin's Creed and the anger at inaccurate portrayal of Japanese feudal society has kicked off a controversy that may undermine Lockley's entire body of work, as it forces Ubisoft to openly apologize and causes a never-ending debate online about whether or not Yasuke was ever even really a samurai. Just to get this out of the way right now, I don't personally have a stake in all of this. Assassin's
I don't
Creed,
either.
to put it very bluntly, has never been tied to reality in my
No,
opinion.
it hasn't.
For a perfect example, we can look at Assassin's Creed 3, which conveniently took place in revolutionary America. Yeah, I don't actually think that the half-Mohawk Indian assassin fought side by side with George Washington to recover an alien object.
I'll do you one better. Literally, Desmond, one of the, literally goes into a machine based on his DNA and is able to experience memories from his DNA. But then in the modern time, he's also interacting with alien objects that allow him to communicate with aliens or goddesses or whatever the hell you want to call them. But literally, that's not historic. I'm just going to be honest. These literal apples of Eden and these alien devices don't exist. So the fact that people are like, oh, it's not historical. Well, neither is a golden apple that literally has power.
I'm not going to sit here and complain about...
Last time I checked, the Pope didn't have a golden rod that gave him superpowers.
Historical accuracy, when the entire franchise is about a secret league of athletically superpowered time travelers fighting another secret society over extraterrestrial artifacts. Frankly, the fact that Yasuke existed as a sort of blank slate historical character that was in fact a real person, but we don't know all that much about him, kind of makes him perfect as a narrative blank canvas.
Yeah, I mean,
when he existed in close proximity to significant historical events. However, that's my personal opinion, and when it comes to Thomas Lockley, personal opinion goes entirely out the window. Hopefully, everyone can follow along with this part. I'll do my best to make it as straightforward.
Yeah, overall, I agree with him. Like, Assassin's Creed, if they wanted to make a character, I think from Assassin's Creed point of view, I think it's fine. But if Ubisoft was trying to paint this as a realistic character, they definitely dropped the ball.
Forward as possible. Yasuke, increasingly popular.
And I think for a lot of people, even probably a couple of Japanese people, though it's mostly white people complaining about this, and I don't care. I don't have a stake in this. The fact that it's not an actual Asian representation is what makes people upset, that the only male figure is a black African. There's definitely some racist undertones because I've heard some, across the waters, people are a little bit more racist against African Americans. I'm not speaking for a population. I'm just saying what I've heard. Sound off down below if you're Asian, what your thoughts are. But overall, a lot of people would prefer this to be an Asian man. It's not my culture. I'm not a white savior. It is what it is for me.
In Western media, with growing recognition across entertainment properties, didn't always hold the same level of recognition. Right now, if you go to his Wikipedia page, there's a pretty sizable entry, but back in 2014, the entry was just a tiny fraction of the size. Except, if you go to the edit history for his Wikipedia page, you find something very interesting, and that is a particular user named Totori Tom, who has made sizable edits to the page, the sources, and the information contained within it. From one of his larger edits, quote, "This is the second in a series of edits I will carry out following a study of his life and times. All will be properly referenced when I get the chance," end quote. And if you look at the actual profile of Totori Tom, you see, quote, "Totori Tom is Thomas Lockley, a faculty member at Nihon University College of Law, Tokyo, Japan. His interests are primarily Japanese history related."
No shot. This dude, that's also very much on the nose. His name is Thomas, and his Totori Tom. Wow. This is got to be the most cultural appropriation I have ever seen. Screw the whole Assassin's Creed thing. This dude is a douche canoe. So he made Wikipedia pages referencing. He literally edited it under a different username. And then what? Did he quote his own book? Like what?
End quote. That may seem innocent for the moment,
Yeah.
or insignificant rather, because any profile on Wikipedia can write anything it wants in the
Yeah.
bio section. But Thomas Lockley is listed on the Nihon University faculty page, and the
Okay.
account Totori Tom was adding his papers and his book as page sources before the work was even published. Here's where it gets really.
Yo, what?
Speaking to Time magazine discussing the life of Yasuke in reference to the Netflix anime series, Lockley had this to say, quote, "There's no record, but tradition holds it that Yasuke was the one who took Nobunaga's head to save it from the enemy." Continuing.
There is no record. Dude, you are the definition of historical revisionist.
Later, Yasuke, therefore, by escaping with the head, could have been seen and has been seen as changing Japanese history.
Could have been and has been. Those are two different things, my friend. Could have and have been. They're not the same.
End quote. That's no small thing. He acknowledges, in the briefest of ways possible, that there's no actual evidence, but goes on to say that Yasuke has been seen as changing Japanese history. However, if you look at the Japanese version of his book, not the English version, it holds an entirely different atmosphere. Please understand, I don't speak Japanese, nor could I find someone who can translate for me at this particular time, so I used Google and various different transcription tools. These are highly imperfect, but the differences here are so profound, I don't see how they could possibly fit together based purely on mistranslation by Google, so here it is. If you're capable of a better translation, please feel free to drop it down below in the comment section. Quote,
All right, throw it at us. What do you got?
A family claiming to be descendants of the Oda clan, Yasuke is said to have smuggled Nobunaga's head and sword out of Honaji Temple to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. Further down, there are several problems with this theory. First, no source, whether Yasuke was involved or not, mentions where Nobunaga's head ended up or not. Froyce's letter is the only source that mentions Yasuke's participation in the battle, but it also makes no mention of Nobunaga's head.
So he has no evidence. There's just a letter, and he's writing everything out his butt. So this book is fan fiction. Can I do that? I think, you know what? I think I'm a white dude, but I'm also half Hispanic. You know what? I'm going to choose Mexico, and I'm going to choose some random character, and I'm going to, like, some historical context, and I'm going to make a book and a wiki page and just make up a bunch of BS and then say that I'm an author on it because I know more about Japanese culture and history than Japanese people do.
If Yasuke had brought the head back to Nanbanji, Froyce would have mentioned it. Second, escaping from the middle of
What a
burning temple
douchebag.
surrounded by many enemy soldiers would have been extremely difficult without the added task of carrying, in addition to one's weapons, an incredibly large and unwieldy object, a human head. End quote. That is a very different tone than
It
what he
is
put
definitely
forward in
different.
Time magazine. When publishing for a Japanese audience, he expresses that it's incredibly unlikely to be true and highlights his own doubt about the subject.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's very obvious that for the Japanese, he's trying to keep credibility, while in America, he's like, yo, look at me. I look at what I found. Look at me.
Subject matter. But when talking to a Western audience, he says that Yasuke, quote, has been seen as changing Japanese history.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, everyone can kind of see the problem.
Oh,
As if
yeah.
that's not enough, and the
He's a
tipping point,
two-faced
at least for me,
prick.
on Lockley's own credibility. In May of 2024, an article and interview in the Japan Times was published pertaining to the controversy around whether or not Yasuke was ever even a samurai at all, which said, quote, most telling to Lockley, however, is that no reputable Japanese historian has raised doubts about Yasuke's samurai bona fides, including Sakujin Kirino, who served as a fact-checker for African samurai and is one of the country's foremost experts on the 1582 Honoji incident, for which Yasuke was believed to be present, end quote. That's a very big deal. one of the country's foremost experts on the 1582 Hanoji incident, and he was a fact checker for Lockley's book over the authenticity of Yasuke being a samurai with no disputes. That's pretty important. Except
Yeah.
it's a lie. Sakae
What?
Kurino publicly on Twitter published a statement that read, quote, "When the Japanese version of Nobunaga and Yasuke, Oda Publishing, based on the original work by Thomas Lockley, was published in 2017, the translator, Yoshiko Fuji, asked me to read it and give my opinion, so I gave a few opinions. It was just that, and it wasn't something as grand as a fact check."
He didn't even read it. The dude's like, yo, hey, read this and give me your opinion. That was fact checking? Bro.
End quote. After which the Japan Times updated their article, removing the claim by Lockley that Sakajin Kurino had served as a fact checker for African samurai. 1 is a fluke, 2 is a coincidence, 3 is a pattern.
Yeah.
Thomas Lockley,
This guy should lose all credibility. Like, this guy is the definition of altering history and making up fan fiction. How are people giving this guy attention?
appears to have been editing the Yasuke Wikipedia page as far back as 2015, citing his own work, which had not even been published yet. He appears to be telling different versions of historical events, at the very least portraying them in radically different ways, depending on his audience, Western versus Japanese. And he appears to have directly lied about the authenticity of his book, using an appeal to authority, as it's called, by claiming a certain expert fact-checked that work.
Hey, my book is sound. It's been fact-checked. Yeah, that dude, he had his friend look through it. He said, hey, it's okay to me. And he said, yeah, that's fine. It was totally fact-checked by a reputable source. He gave check marks. He was like, yeah, thumbs up.
Before the expert themselves had to come out and clarify that was
not true.
Really. 1 is a fluke, 2 is a coincidence, 3 is a pattern.
I mean, I get, yes, on a graph, when you have many dots and they form a line, it's not just correlation. There's some causation. There's some reality in that data going on there. And this guy has, he's definitely something.
Just in case for anyone still on the fence, here is Lockley in his own words discussing the book that he wrote. Shout out to Vast Establishment on Reddit.
So he wrote a book and then wrote Wikipedia based on his book under his own name.
For discovering this particular interview.
This new book of yours might read to many like a novel, but to my understanding, you're not.
That's because it's fan fiction. It is literally he wrote fan fiction.
A novelist?
No, I'm not. I did originally write an academic book of this, which was published in Japanese. And
true story.
That was, I think, 2017. So the book which you would find in front of you, African Samurai, is a much more readable version, less academic, far more narrative, though it's still based on the exact factual history. It's just simply
factual.
Not full of
factual history. When you said there was no evidence, I'm sure your book is just full of facts,
references and other things like that.
Just to recap that.
Oh, you didn't say references.
The book
okay.
Which you find in front of you is a much more readable version, less academic, far more narrative, though still based on the exact factual history. However, later on, when the host, Jingyi Lee, who's a PhD candidate cultural historian of 19th century Japan, go figure, questions the biography, referring to it as more historical fiction, he replies by just brushing it off immediately.
And as we talked about earlier, many may read this book as a novel because of, well, apart from the very specific historic background, there's also a lot of depictions of characters.
With no facts or evidence.
Development. But its category on Amazon and Goodreads is biography.
Yeah.
Well, personally, I feel like it's more of a historical fiction. So,
listen, when someone who reads your book and is actually of Japanese descent says, "Yo, this is some fan fiction," you know that this is fan fiction.
This book.
Well, there's very, very little there which is actually fiction. There are
Very little.
various scenes which were added because we knew that they might have happened. There's one scene where
Might have happened.
Yasuke is
Bro, you can't just insert, well, it might have happened. That's not history. That's not historical. That's fan fiction. Oh, well, it might have happened. That's not what history is. Well, it might have happened.
What
you have no, there's no actual evidence or even anything that gives some suggestion. It's just it could have happened.
A hawking session, and we know that Nobunaga was almost obsessed by hawking and hunting with birds. So therefore, it's highly likely. I mean, we can say probably we're 99% sure that Yasuke would have seen that. So
That's not how that works. That's not how statistics work. That's not how that works. You can't just assume that someone was there at all times. You can't just assume that someone sees that at all times. That's not how history and statistics work.
We did make up the occasional scene just to give a little bit of atmosphere, if you like.
I should clarify here, Thomas Lockley in the aftermath.
Did he just say we added some to add atmosphere? That is fan fiction. You are making a story. You're not telling history if you're adding to something just to add atmosphere.
Aftermath of this new scrutiny.
As someone who actually has gone to college and has a master's degree, who's interacted with research and all that, and I've had to take several history classes, not necessarily for my degree, but just in my journey, my college. It is so baffling that this person probably has a degree and is actually making any kind of headway in the history world. It is just baffling to me because he is wrong in so many counts. That's not how that works.
Seems to have fully deleted all of his social media profiles.
Oh, I wonder
He's
why.
distanced himself entirely from the controversy, but the controversy is not done with him.
Oh,
Hosted
no.
by Satoshi Hamada as a serving member of the House of Counselors in Japan, which is the upper portion of the Diete, though he seems to be more like a fringe candidate than anything else, rather than a central figure.
He's trying to make his name.
We're looking for your feedback. We were consulted by a French game company about a historical alteration of Japan. The content of the consultation is shared below in images. We have also quoted a post that appears to point out the problem with the game in question. We would like to hear your specific requests and opinions. Further
Ubisoft.
down, thanks for the information about Assassin's Creed Shadows and Yasuke. Keep your research focused. Primary source information on Yasuke, Yasuke information in Thomas Lockley's book. Please request the National Diete Library to investigate this matter. Secretaries of Satoshi Hamada's office. End quote. There it is. Ubisoft, with Assassin's Creed Shadows, has decided to focus a portion of their newest title on a character named Yasuke. But Yasuke, despite many people vehemently claiming that he was in fact a samurai, is not the subject of historical consensus.
I mean, it seems like this one dude made this book that everyone's referencing, and it seems like his book is just fan fiction. Isn't it like a little interesting that it's a white dude? It's a white dude writing on the history and culture of Japanese people. That's concerning to me. That we're just supposed to accept that this white dude knows more than the Japanese people do. Also, I feel like if it was an African American, maybe African Americans might have some lore or history behind that. Like, that seems like pretty notable. There's a lot of dots, and I don't know necessarily where they connect or whether they connect. There's a lot of dots on these graphs that are concerning. It makes no sense that people follow. And this is why you always want to do your own personal research. Just because someone says something, even stats, look at the research. Look at it. Look at how many they researched, where they researched, what were the questions, what did they do? Actually take the time. And I know a lot of people don't do that. They take everything at face value, but you can't, because then you get dudes like this who make fan fiction and pass it as history.
Many experts believe he was merely a retainer or a servant or some form of lesser caste. while others, namely Thomas Lockley in particular, assert that he was not only a samurai, but a legendary samurai.
Ah,
that has,
legendary.
quote, been seen as changing Japanese history.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Ubisoft, presumably relying on his work as one of the narrative pillars here, given that the game centers on Yasuke as an active samurai who participated in a lot of combat routinely, and Thomas Lockley is the only person pushing him forward as a hero story from an active.
Yeah, isn't that funny? It's the white dude. Like, it's literally a white dude, which is so weird that a white dude is pushing it so much for an African American. And it's just like, you are doing a disservice to Japanese culture and to African Americans. Because I feel bad for African Americans here. Because it's just like this culture war where people are hating that this samurai is African American. That he might be a fictional character that didn't exist. And it just does such a disservice to African Americans, man. Like, if you're going to use someone that actually has a real historical account based on just more than just one white dude's book, and do them service. Like, seriously, there's got to be some really cool lore and culture aspects in Africa, in Africa. Am I the only one that thinks that? Like, I know, like, I'm not African American. I can't speak for the African Americans, but I think they would. I would, if, as someone who is Hispanic, not Mexican, by the way, just Argentinian. I don't know nothing about Argentina, but if you came out and said, we're going to do this game based on this Argentinian hero, and he actually ends up being a badass, I'm going to connect with that. So I can imagine African Americans feel the same way. Again, I don't speak for them, because I'm not.
Academic perspective in Japanese.
But some reason this white dude is speaking for them.
History has now had to issue an apology that reads, quote, "We have put significant
I
effort
saw
into
this.
ensuring an immersive and respectful representation of feudal Japan. However, our intention has never been to present any of our Assassin's Creed games, including Assassin's Creed Shadows, as factual representations
True.
of history or historical characters," end quote. And yet, this is the same company, once again referencing the Xbox GameWire interview, that said they are showing real historical figures.
Granted, they said real historical figures, but they never stated Yasuke. To their benefit, they didn't reference him. They said Nobunaga, which was historical, but they never say anything about him being real.
So you're not only playing in feudal Japan, but also learning about this fantastic time period.
Yeah.
Why would you be learning from things if they're telling fictional stories? Like, this doesn't jive.
I agree. That is kind of weird.
Actually see why they chose a narrative blank slate for the purpose of storytelling. I don't personally look at Assassin's Creed and think, where's the historical accuracy? But when you make a game about a certain culture, which Assassin's Creed has routinely done, why would you choose the only example of a samurai who isn't even agreed on as being a samurai?
That, again, I agree with that. That is really, really stupid. Like, why? I'm sure there's been a lot of historical samurai that would have made more sense. I absolutely agree.
As your main character, and then put a cringy hip-hop filter over that culture's music.
Yeah, it's
Why would
pretty
you make it so that
stereotypical.
when Assassin's Creed is finally set in Japan, you don't even play as a Japanese warrior half of the time. Instead, focusing on an outsider who brutally slaughters real Japanese samurai
Yeah.
in the world, when every single previous Assassin's Creed game focused on a character that actually related to the culture of origin.
That's also
In
true.
the Revolutionary War, the assassin was half Mohawk. In the original trilogy, Ezio Auditore was Italian. In Valhalla, Ivor was a Viking, etc., etc. Why are you breaking that trend now? At the end of the day, the
Syndicate was English, and then there was the Paris one where they were French. Yeah, I mean, it does definitely check out. And I get that they probably haven't had like an African American character and they were trying to shoehorn in there for diversity. Because let's be honest, if you think Ubisoft cares about African Americans and Japanese, if you think they care about diversity, they don't. They just want your money. Most companies do not care about inclusion. They don't care about diversity. They don't care about none of that. They care about your money. And if it was more profitable to be racist, they would be racist. And technically, they are being racist with the hip hop thing. But if they wanted a full send, they knew they were going to get the clicks, they knew they're going to get the cash money, they would full send the racist stereotypes to the brim. They would full send. Do not be fooled by companies. They do what's best for money. That's it. They do not care. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about our feelings. They don't care about our beliefs and our morals. They care about money. So do not be baffled. Do not be fooled. All this is just fake inclusion, tokenism. It's all part of the game because they want your money.
Yasuke Disaster is the story of a historian who centered his entire body of work on portraying a little-known Japanese figure as some sort of legendary hero, twisting his words
fiction
all over the place depending on who was in the audience at that particular time. And Ubisoft went and made half of a AAA game about it. In response, scholars, critics, regular players, pretty much everybody online has been weighing in on whether or not his character was ever really a samurai, whether or not he should be the main focus of the game, and why Ubisoft might have made all of these creatively baffling decisions in the first place. But at the end of the day, I don't really have those answers. My opinion, Ubisoft wanted to score some diversity points.
There it
That's
is.
really just what it boils down
Yep.
to. Yasuke happened to fit a pretty convenient narrative template while also scoring them those diversity points and allow them a real historical figure who stands out dramatically in feudal Japan for some of the wrong reasons, if you take this controversy at face value. And they use that as their starting point and unwittingly rope themselves into a culture war for all of the wrong reasons at the worst possible time, as people accuse each other of either rewriting history maliciously or being viciously racist, depending on which side of the political aisle you're on. That's it. That is the Yasuke controversy explained.
I think it was perfectly explained, did a really good job of showing, and it really informed me on this Lockley guy. Like, I think at the end of the day, I think the game is whatever, right? I think it's again, I've never seen Assassin's Creed as historic. If, again, you want to stop to think about Connor and Assassin's Creed 3, like, I guarantee there wasn't, like he said, there wasn't an Indian assassin that was working with our forefathers and all. Like, that was obviously not historically accurate. That character does not exist. And you could say that Yasuke doesn't exist. He's a fictional character. That's fine. If you could be upset, like, why are we using a black fictional character when we can have a fictional Japanese character? I agree. I can tell you that Ubisoft just did it for, like he said, diversity tokens. They just want money. But I think this issue is way overblown in that regard. I think the bigger issue is that it's separate from the game on this whole, the Yasuke story in itself is its own issue, where you have a white dude making fan fiction and literally quoting himself on Wikipedia. He's like puffing up himself based on his own book. It's like he's circle jerking himself. And when he gets pressured, he folds. Like, again, this is just a good indication that you should always check and double check sources and evidence and all that stuff. But I will agree, I think 100% Mr. Thomas is a fan fiction writer, and that's it. Don't know why he decided to write fan fiction on a African American. It's a little weird, but he did. And the fact that it wasn't actually fact checked or even supported by any other Japanese sources is huge to me, because it is their culture. If anyone should have record and understanding of their culture and history, it should be the Japanese people, not some white dude. That's my opinion. Let me know in the comments down below. I think this is probably like a good conclusion, unless something comes out like magically altering. I think this is probably my last video on the subject, because I think this game is not for me in the first place, because it's not Assassin's Creed. It is insert whatever game you want. It's just living under the umbrella of the name Assassin's Creed. I watched the gameplay and none of it looked like Assassin's Creed except for a few bits, but it looked like a generic ninja and a generic samurai gameplay. That's about it. This game does not seem iconic to me, but again, I'm sure it will get a lot of sales because of people wanting to see what this is all about because of the controversy, but also because people who inherently enjoy this series. This game is not for me. I know it. I own it. And I'm just going to enjoy the old ones. So if they do remakes of the old ones and they're good, I will be playing the old ones, because those are the true Assassin's Creed to me, and I will live in my bubble Until next time, hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. As always, game out. Huzzah.